now for our lesson today, which we have had with reference to the third personal pronoun and the verb Amy, I want you to notice, as far as the board is concerned, just by way of a little bit of review before we have our exam. Now we've put on the board exercise number 5. All right. Now I don't know what you do in your papers by way of the exercise of your worksheets, but what I'd like for you to do is, if you have a problem by way of vocabulary. Now I've noticed that a number of folks taking first year Greek, they do this. They will write out their exercises in Greek first, and then they'll come along and do almost an interlinear. That is, underneath the particular Greek words which are here, they will put the meaning. See? For instance, Kai means and says, and Jesus, and because, and so forth down the line. Now, that may be all right, but that is just getting the meaning of words, isn't it? Just getting a hold of the meaning of words. Now, the exercises here are designed to show you how the previous lesson works by way of a practical exercise here. Now, for instance, let me just have you help me here. What does this mean? Kai, meaning what? And. What is this?
He sees.
He sees. All right, now then, that's a verb, isn't it?
I mean, speaks.
That's a verb. He speaks, he says, instead of he sees. All right, now since I know it's a verb, what's the first thing I do when I come to a verb? Well, what do you do?
I kind of go through a conjugation of it.
All right, I determine, first of all, excuse me, what tense it is. Now, you've only had 2 tenses, right? You've had the present and you've had the imperfect. Now then, I look at that verb and I say this. All right, I know that this is the ending, A, and I know that's the stem. But I don't see anything in front which would be an augment. If there was an augment, that would be what kind of a tense then?
Perfect.
It would be imperfect, and this would be different, wouldn't it? It would be changed. All right, now then, since I know that it doesn't have an augment, and I can see that, obviously, therefore I know it's a present tense. All right, now then, I look at the ending, and I find out what person. Well, what is that person of the present tense? I go through then my personal endings, don't I? O, ace, a, amen, eti, usi, name for the infinitive. So I know I've got what? Third person singular. So that means I've got the subject in the verb. So I look around in this particular sentence to see if I can find a noun in the nominative case. And sure enough, I find an article along with Jesus, don't I? Now, just a word of caution. When it comes to proper nouns, names, you may look at that name and get a little confused by its appearance. There's us on the end of Jesus, isn't it right? You might want, oh my, what case is that? All right, now look. If I've got an article with it, I know exactly the case, don't I? I know that's a nominative case. Ha, Jesus. Irrespective of what the spelling may be. And you're going to learn later on that proper nouns may be spelled differently, but are in a sentence that must be translated in a different way than they're spelled. Now, isn't that a great anticipation? But take all the help you can get now. That happens to be ha Jesus Nominative. I don't care what it looks like. It's proper noun, proper name, spelled differently. Now, you and I know that today, don't we? Well, my gracious sakes alive. I can't spell your last name right today. It's a French name. I don't spell French like the Frenchman would spell, because I don't know French. See? All right? And little Laura Lee downstairs. Well, I wouldn't spell her name the way her mommy spells it. And take your name, DePietro. And your dad was out here. And I said, Dan, how do you pronounce your last name? He says, well, it all depends. Whether you got money or whether you don't have money. If you don't have money, it's DePietro. If you do have money, it's DiPietro. And of course, we're talking about the fellow on the Hamilton football team. Always the newscaster. Well, I don't know whether he's a wide receiver or what he is, but if you listen to that newscaster, well, DiPietro. And they got his name on there. And they put his picture up. And I look at that name. I said, now that's the way Wes spells his name, and we don't call him Wes DiPietro. We call him Wes DePietro. Thank you. All right. You see, there's difference in proper nouns. Get accustomed to it, as far as the Greek is concerned, because that's what you're going to run up against. Now then, having said that, what do I have by way of a subject to the verb? I have the nominative, don't I? So, and Jesus says, or Jesus speaks, or Jesus is saying, or Jesus speaks, right? Because that's present tense. Hoti. What does hoti mean? Well, didn't we have it in our vocabulary just today or previously? What was that previously? Means that or because, right? Now then, what do I have here? Hoi, Goulais. What case is that?
Nominative.
Nominative. Number, please.
Plural.
Plural. Suppose I've forgotten that particular noun. All right. Again, my article. Get your article down pat. My article is a dead giveaway. All right. And Jesus says that. The meaning now. What's the meaning of Goulais?
Servants.
The servants. The servants. That's fine. But now I've got two over here. All right. Now then. Case, please.
Genitive.
Genitive. Autos, autu, auto, auton. Right? Now then, we learned something in this last lesson, didn't we? We learned about an intensive and an identical pronoun. So long as they're in the nominative case, right? It means either same or self, but it's got to be in the nominative. That's not in the nominative. That's in the genitive. And that genitive being used with this noun, how do I translate it? That the servants, what is it?
Of him.
Of him, or
His.
his. Exactly the same, isn't it? That his servants. Now then, I've got the subject, haven't I? Verb. What is it? What tense?
Present.
Present tense. What's the personal ending?
Third person plural.
Third person plural. Do I have a plural subject?
Sir.
Hoi Goulais is the plural subject of this particular verb. So I know then This is the subject of the verb. That his servants are glorifying, case,
Accusative.
accusative. Therefore, I know it's not one of those pronouns. I know it's not an intensive pronoun. I know it's not an identical pronoun because it is not in the nominative case, but it's in one of the oblique cases. And don't forget, the oblique cases are every case other than the nominative. Can you remember that? Oblique case is every case other than the nominative. So, immediately, in light of this particular lesson, that you have this example gives you help concerning the pronoun, not as an intensive or identical, but as what kind of a pronoun? What kind of a pronoun is this? If it's not identical or if it's not intensive, what kind of a pronoun is that? Yeah, can you tell me, or you know? It's a personal pronoun. It's a personal pronoun. All right? Now we got three personal pronouns, haven't we? The first personal pronoun is I. The second personal pronoun is you. Now we're introduced to the third person pronoun, autos. Either it can mean it can mean she, it can mean he. All depending upon the gender of the noun or how it is used. Now here, I know, even though I might have the same case, isn't this the same form, not only for the masculine of autos, but also for what other gender?
Neuter.
Neuter. Sure. I know then I've got a masculine third person pronoun because it is used with a masculine noun. See that? I know that. It's simply dogmatic. It's not it. And here, what does the context help me to decide? That his servants are glorifying not it. That makes the sentence unintelligible, doesn't it? That his servants are glorifying him. Now, if that were in a different case, such as the nominative, well, it would be used and would be functioning in a different way, wouldn't it? Because it could be the same or the servant himself, if that were nominative. But I know it's not an intensive or an identical pronoun. I know it's a personal pronoun. All right, any question at that point? Do you see that perfectly clear? All right. Now then, let's look at some of these other particular examples in your exercise on page 69 for your lesson today. All right. Well, he doesn't give us the imperfect of Amy, does he? In any of those particular examples. But let's notice verse 2. Okay? Now then, notice verse 2. That's a good one. That's a good one, isn't it? Maybe we ought to put that on the board just to see what you have done or can do with it. All right, here we go, boys. And we'll write that up just a little bit higher. Autoi humis uk ekrin amatha comma Allah auton crinomen. All right, here we go. Now then, what is this?
First personal pronoun.
That's
Or,
it.
not, yeah, first personal pronoun.
Oh, is it
Or
first
second-
person pronoun?
Second youth.
Second person pronoun?
Nominative.
Nominative? Number, singular, plural.
Plural.
Dr. Clark, should not be a first person.
All right.
Same as-
You're right. Misspelled it. Hey, Mace, thank you. All right, now then. That's the first person plural, isn't it? All right, first person plural. If this is first person plural, what's that? What's that?
What? Altoid?
Yeah, what is that?
That's plural.
Plural. What kind of a pronoun? All right, let's take our books and turn over to page 66. What kind of a pronoun? What kind of a pronoun do we have here?
I took it as a personal pronoun because it didn't have any article there or anything around there, so I just took it as an oblique. Oh, it can't be those nominative.
It can't be bleak because it's nominative. All right.
No.
So,
Take another look. Take a look good. On page 66, you've got a choice. You've got a choice whether it is an intensive pronoun or whether it's an identical pronoun.
probably intensive.
All right. So therefore, how would you translate it?
Well, do we have we ourselves?
All right, we ourselves. Now then, you see, when you don't have an article, context has got to help you, hasn't it? Now then, how do I really now know that it has to be an intensive pronoun?
How do we know?
Yeah.
Because of the verb may help.
The verb. The verb is what? Parse that thing for me.
Well, that can be perfect, present, middle, or passive.
Not perfect, you're not talking about
It's
this.
a third person plural, or first person plural, imperfect, indicative, active,
Not active,
Middle or
or
passive.
middle passive, yeah.
middle or
sorry.
passive. All right.
You know,
Why do I know it's imperfect? Because it's got an augment, right? An augment. All right. I know it's first person plural by the ending, right? Amatha. Now then, I have to make a choice. I have to make a choice between whether it's a middle or a passive voice, don't I? I have to make it, because form tells me it's exactly the same. That's what the form is telling me. So, I know I've got an intensive pronoun by the fact that I've got the verb in the verb, I've got the noun repeated that gives me unity of thought and expression. We ourselves were not being judged. We ourselves, intensive pronoun, were not imperfect. After you put your negative in there, were not being judged. Allah. But, now then, you've got Alton over here. What case is Alton?
Accusative.
Therefore, I know immediately I'm relieved of the problem of trying to decide whether it's an intensive or identical, because it's one of the oblique cases, isn't it? Absolutely. And we have learned, by virtue of our declension, that is in the accusative case, and the accusative case is what? Object. All right, let's see if this works out. But, all right, now then, what is this?
That's first person plural of imperfect, indicative, present, middle or passive.
Not middle or passive,
Oh, present.
not present, but you're getting your
Yes.
voices mixed up with your tenses. That's all right, because, man, I still do it. First person, plural, imperfect, because it's got the augment, imperfect, indicative active of the word krino. Remember we learned it.
I judge.
It means I judge. So, I've got my subject in the verb as far as this compound sentence. What's a compound sentence? What's a
Two
compound?
phrases joined together.
Two clauses. Two clauses joined together by some kind of conjunction. It could be kai and here. It happens to be Allah, but showing contrast. All right. Now, we ourselves were not being judged, but we were judging the object. We were judging him. See that? See how simple that is? By taking now what you have learned, putting it to work, by virtue of grammatical rules. And you make sense out of it. We ourselves were not being judged, but we were judging him. All right?
So that if it's in the nominative, the pronoun, then it has to be either intensive or identical. But if it's in any of the oblique cases, it's just a pronoun.
Right. That's right. Yeah. If this third person pronoun autos, again, let me emphasize just what you said. If this word autos occurs in the nominative, then be suspicious that it is intensive or identical. Now, I say suspicious because you're going to learn some other things later on that have a whole lot of bearing on autos. But up to this point, it's going to be either intensive or identical. But if it's in one of the oblique cases, then it is translated in light of its usage in the sentence. You remember, like the other of his or his disciples, so forth, like that. All right. Okay. Well, that's very good. We'll call that enough for our class this time. All right, now take your books and turn to page 69 for lesson number 21. Lesson number 21. Now, let me just make a statement with reference to the next 5 chapters, which we will cover, and then have our exam for 5 lessons. That probably this section, when it comes to the matter of the verb, is one of your more important sections, because you're going to be dealing with what is called a deponent or defective verb. You're also going to be dealing with the subjunctive mode. And then the very last lesson, as far as 25 is concerned, you are going to be dealing with the second aorist tense by way of the subjunctive, active, and middle. So you can see you have a rather tall order before you, but you're getting in now to some very, very important grammatical principles as far as the Greek grammar is concerned. So now let's look at lesson number 21. It's entitled The Defective or the Deponent Verbs. Now there's a little difference between a defective verb and a deponent verb, as he explains in this section, and we will try to emphasize that difference just a little bit later. However, the vocabulary that you see before you on page 69, paragraph 151, observe that each one of these verbs end in a little different manner than the vocabulary verbs that you have been introduced previously. They end with oh my, don't they? Oh my, oh my. Now then, there are two demonstrative pronouns called ekenos and hutos, aute, and tuta. Now these particular pronouns are demonstrative, which means that they are translated as that or this. Now, as he's going to explain a little bit later, but let me suggest it to you right here so that you can be on the lookout. When you have the demonstrative pronoun that's called a remote demonstrative. When you have the demonstrative pronoun this, that is called an immediate demonstrative pronoun. Now let's just see if we can sort of explain that so it will be of a little, it'll be a little clearer to you. When you say that house, you're talking about something that is away from you by way of distance, isn't that right? That's the general idea. That house, that building, that year, or that car that we saw, and so forth. Therefore, you can get the idea of the remote aspect of that the demonstrative pronoun that. Now, what is the plural for that? What is the plural for that?
Those.
Those, that's right. So it's that and those when it comes to the matter of the remote demonstrative pronoun. Now then, the immediate demonstrative pronoun, and it has three different forms, and you'll learn those forms by virtue of the declension just a little bit later. What would be the plural of this?
These.
These, that's right. This, talking about the singular. These, talking about the plural. So that has in view something that may be closer. This hour, this book, this desk. Or in the plural, of course, is referring to these. Now, I want to pronounce for you this vocabulary, and you pronounce it after me. Aperkomai.
Aperkomai.
Apokrinomai.
Apokrinomai.
Bulamai.
Bulamai.
Genomai.
Genomai.
Deerkomai.
Deerkomai.
Dunamai.
Dunamai.
Acerkomai.
Acerkomai.
Exerkomai.
Exerkomai.
Erkomai.
Erkomai.
Paruomai.
Paruomai.
Proserkomai.
Proserkomai.
Ekenos.
Ekenos.
Hutas.
Hutas.
Haute.
Haute.
Tuta.
Tuta.
All right, now over on the other page, page 70, you have two prepositions. Dia.
Dia.
Pros.
Pros.
Now then, you've got to remember these prepositions occur in different or occur with different cases. For instance, very, very important is this dia, and it is to be found in usage with the genitive case and the accusative case. Now it has different meanings like other prepositions when they're used with different cases. Now when you have dia with the genitive, it will mean through or by, and this is emphasizing sort of agency, as you're going to learn later. Now when it occurs with a word in the accusative case, because of, for the sake of, on account of. Now, a very, very important passage to remember, I believe it's the last part of Romans 4. And you have dia with the accusative. Because of our justification, he was raised again. See? And so it's dia with the accusative. Now then, he gives the explanation in the next paragraph, and he uses a word that we may not have emphasized, but I would like to give an emphasis of that at this point. Note the many compound verbs in the vocabulary. What do we understand by a compound verb? What do you know? What is the immediate thinking that you have when he speaks of a compound verb?
Two words put together to form one.
All right. For instance, what is a compound sentence? A compound sentence is actually two independent sentences connected by a conjunction which makes one sentence. That's called a compound sentence. All right. When you talk about a compound word, well, you're talking about a word that's made up of two words. Now, you have often heard someone speak and someone teach and say, now then this particular Greek word comes from two words, isn't that right? You have a preposition that precedes a noun or a verb, and so you're talking about a compound word. All right, now then he explains that in a manner here, especially when it comes to the verbs in the vocabulary, especially a preposition plus erchomai. Now let's turn back to the vocabulary and notice, if you will, the first word in the left-hand column, up, erchomai. Well, what's that a compound of? Appa, all right, appa and erchomai. All right, let's go on down the line, and the last word in that particular sentence, and we're not going to look at every one of them, but it's eis erchomai. Well, what makes up that particular compound word?
Ace and erchomai?
Right, you are. Now then, the word erchomai itself occurs in the right-hand column, and it's the second word, isn't it? Erchomai. Now then, he endeavors to give you the meaning of erchomai with these various prefixed prepositions. They're actually compound verbs, aren't they? All right, up erchomai, I go away. Well, you can see erchomai means I go or I come. Well, when you put the up in front of it, you're talking about, and you're using the significance of appa, which means separation or off or from or so forth. I go away. Now then, here's another one in the middle there. I go through. Well, erchomai plus dia is by or through. And then eis erchomai, you know, eis is a preposition which means into. All right, it just simply means I enter. Then, of course, you have this very interesting one, ex erchomai. Again, the preposition ek. Well, you've learned what ek means. It means out or out of, and emphasizing the fact that here is separation from within, and so the meaning is I go out. Well, no, that's not hard, but very interesting, and something that you will profit by as you study your Greek New Testament and translate it, and I'm looking forward to getting into that the middle of next semester. Now, he further explains, many of these verbs occur hundreds of times in the New Testament. And you better believe what he said, because they certainly do. Now then, the explanation, little b, dunamai does not have a thematic vowel. The alpha appears in all persons. Now, you remember the thematic vowel was the omicron epsilon? All right. Instead of it being dun-omai, it's dun-amai. You see, the alpha. Now then, in the second person singular, two forms are found. Dunasai and dune. All right. Now, little c. Genomai is used also as a copulative. What do we mean by a copulative?
It's a connector.
It's a connecting word. Now, Amy is a copulative. It's a connecting word. And there are three very, very interesting words in the Greek New Testament which have a close kinship. Now, I think I'll just simply put them on the board for you. You have Amy, you have Genomai, and then you have Hoop Arco. Now, all of these words can be copulatives. Now, this word Amy looks at a state of present existence. This particular word, Genomai, looks at entrance into that state. Right? And that's the reason it's translated become sometimes. Now then, this particular word looks at a state that has existed in the past. Those three words. Amy, Genomai, Huparko. And this is very, very interesting in light of Philippians chapter 2. In Philippians chapter 2, we read this. Who being in the form of God. Who being, this is the word huparko. Who being. Now then, that word morphe emphasizes, of course, that the form is not the external aspect, but the spiritual aspect, being the very image of God. So, it is emphasizing the Lord Jesus Christ in his present state was what he always was, being in the form of God. Now, Amy again looks at a state of existence. I am, I am, I am. Genomai looks at coming into that state of existence, whereas Huparko looks at being in a state of existence by virtue of the fact that he always was in that state. All right? Now that has a real bearing upon the proper interpretation of Scripture. And you'll profit much by keeping in mind these various facets of significance when it comes to certain words which are copulatives and such as that. Now then, the explanation in paragraph number 152. He's going to try to explain for us now what is meant by a defective verb and what is meant by a deponent verb. And you know, that's what he listed here, was the deponent verbs, isn't that right? Defective or deponent verbs. Now let me read, and then actually the basic explanation is not in the first paragraph, although it's helpful, but it's in the last few paragraphs. Defective verbs. Some verbs were used in all the voices, in all the tenses as luo. He said many, and there are many. Many verbs have their existence in all three voices, the active voice, the middle voice, and the passive voice, and also in all of the tenses. However, some verbs, some of these verbs, in some tenses were used only in one voice and in other tenses. In another voice, as bino, I go, the some verbs were used in one voice only, as came I lie, or am late. Now he's made a statement. Now he's going to explain that statement by virtue of explaining what a defective verb is in the next paragraph. The term defective is applied to those verbs which are used either in the middle voice or in the passive voice and not in the active voice, but seemingly have a simple active meaning, as aisthanomai, I perceive, in the middle voice, bulamai, I wish, in the passive voice. Now then, listen. When he is translating it, what's he doing? He's putting it in the active voice. So the defective verbs are those verbs that have their form, if you please, either in the middle or passive voice, but are translated in the active voice. Understand that? Because you have learned, haven't you, that the middle voice is the subject acting on itself. I wash myself, for instance. See? Or the passive voice is the subject being acted upon. I was washed. But when it's a defective verb, it's going to be translated in the active voice. Now you'll get onto that a little bit later, but if you can batten it down now, it'll help. Now, the verbs in the vocabulary are defective verbs. But some of these verbs have active forms in some tenses, as ginomai, because the second perfect active of ginomai is gegana. These verbs have been called deponent, middle or passive, because it was difficult to see the distinctive force of the voice. It is not hard to recognize the personal interest of the subject in the verbs in the middle voice. All right, just as sort of a rule of thumb at this juncture, a defective verb and a deponent verb will, in all probability, be translated in the active voice. Okay? Just sort of batten that down at the present moment. And variations to that rule will occur at a later time. But a deponent and defective verb are those verbs that may or may not have their forms in the middle or passive altogether, and usually do not have an active form unless it's in some particular other voice, but are always translated as an active. It says erkomai, for instance. That's a middle form, isn't it? Erkomai. Well, you don't say I go out myself. It says I go out. I'm doing the action, and that would also be the form if it would occur in the passive. Well, you just simply can't translate it. I am going out, but that isn't proper English, nor is it good Greek at all. But the idea is that as far as that particular word, erkomai, is used, it has that form, it has the middle form, you see, but it is to be translated in the active sense, I go out. Now then he gives you the declension of hutas. Again, observe now that the declension of hutas in the masculine neuter follows what declension? What declension does
autos?
Huh?
Autos.
Well, yeah, but what is the second declension or first declension?
Oh.
Masculine neuter follows
second declension.
Second declension. The feminine follows what declension?
First.
First declension. First declension. That's right. With the exception, of course, as you've learned, in the genitive plural, the accent doesn't go back on the ultima as it does in the first declension nouns. Okay, 154. Observe the rough breathing occurs in the nominative, masculine, and feminine, singular and plural, but all other forms with tau. Can you see that? You will notice in the left-hand column, the masculine, hutas. Now then, all of the rest of the cases have the tau. Now when you come to the masculine nominative, you have the rough breathing mark over hutoi. All the rest of the forms have tau. Now when you come to the feminine, you have precisely the same scheme, don't you? All right, when you come to the neuter, what's the neuter? The tau occurs throughout the entire declension. All right. The diphthong of the penile u and ow varies as the vowel of the ultima, omicron with omega, or alpha with eta. The accent remains on the penult. Now the declension of ekanos is like that of autos, except the accent, note in the neuter singular nominative, the accent ekano. All right, now then he discusses on page 72 a little more length concerning hutos and ekanos, which we have previously mentioned to you. Now the demonstrative pronoun hutos and ekanos are demonstrative pronouns. In contrast, hutos refers as a rule to that to what is near or last mentioned, and ekanos to what is remote or absent. So, again, hutos is the immediate, and ekanos is the remote. Now then, the use of them. The use of hutos and the use of ekanos. When they are used with a substantive or a noun, they commonly have the predicate position. What's the predicate position? What the predicate position is? What is it?
It doesn't follow the article.
All right, the predicate position, as far as we've generally learned when it comes to the adjective, is a word that does not follow the article. Okay? Now then, he gives you an illustration. Ha, logos, hutos. Okay, it doesn't follow the article, does it, as far as hutos is concerned. Or, hutos ha logos, doesn't follow the article. This word. Now then, it is translated as an attributive, isn't it? This word. It isn't translated, the word is this. It's translated this word. So the position may be predicate, but the translation is attributive. Can you remember that? All right, now then, the same thing for ekene. It has the predicate position, but is translated in the attributive manner. That day, not day is that. Okay. Now, when the article does not occur with a noun, the noun is in the predicate. That is, he's going to give us an illustration. Triptane, tautane, hemeron. This, a third day, not this third day. This, a third day. They are often used alone, without noun. And number 3 is very important. You just have to remember this. Star it, stomp on it, do whatever you want to do in order to remember. They are often used alone. That is, not with a noun. Now, when they are used alone, notice how they're translated. Hutos, this one. Now, hutos is masculine, isn't it? So you supply a noun of the same gender with that particular pronoun. This one, or this man, or this person. Ekeni, why does he translate it that woman?
Because it's feminine?
It's feminine, okay? Now, tuta. This thing. Neuter, isn't it? Now, tauta. Now, you are going to find that this book, in a few cases, violates what he states here. Tauta means these things. These things. Sometimes in this book, you're going to find it translated as the singular. But that's not right. These things. Always these things. Tauta. All right? That is all that we'll take by way of this particular lesson. And I want you to make sure that you have those exercises well in hand. And then look at the present subjunctive active, and listen, there's a lot in that. There's just a lot in that because you are introduced to not only the present active of Lou, but also the present subjunctive of Amy. Now you just have to have that down without any reservation when it comes to the matter of knowing them. You can just lift them right off. So get your exercises down. Is there any particular question at this juncture with reference to the exercise from the Greek to the English of paragraph 158? Any particular question that you might have that we might, for instance, take number 2. Take number 2 there. Tuta ta teknon eis erkata eis ton oikon ekenon. All right, translate that verse for me, would you, Dwayne?
This child was entering into that house.
Okay. This child was entering. Now, parse for me, eis erkata.
Third person, singular, present imperfect,
You don't mean,
middle or passive,
you don't mean present imperfect. You mean
imperfect, indicative, middle and passive. No.
you're getting your modes and your voices
Yeah.
mixed up. Third person singular, imperfect, indicative,
Middle or passive.
middle or passive of
Eis erkomai.
eis erkomai, and you translated it as an active, didn't you?
Well, yeah.
This child was going. Now, it wasn't translated, this child was going himself, or this child was being taken, or anything like that. No, you see, you have an illustration of a deponent function, don't you? This child, and now tuta, being in the predicate position, is translated in the attributive sense. This child was going, active translation, and active imperfect, then into, all right, you have the remote then, your remote demonstrative into that house. That's a good exercise because it's giving you an exercise with reference to the immediate demonstrative, with reference to the remote demonstrative, and also with an imperfect tense dealing with a deponent verb. And the deponent verb is translated in the active sense. All right? Can you see that? Now then, just by way of review, why is ton oikon in the accusative case?
Because it's the object.
No.
Well, it's got a preposition that works with the accusative.
Preposition ace, isn't it? Now then, Wes, you are right, but not the direct object. It happens to be the object of the preposition, see? And therefore, we say ace is used with the accusative. All right.
Just could you do number 6?
Okay.
I had the Lord spoke these words of eternal life,
No.
but it just didn't seem right.
All right. The subject is what?
The Lord.
The Lord. Now then, what is alegen?
That's third person singular, imperfect.
All right. Now, the Lord was speaking. Now then, what is to toe? Part of speech.
It's pronoun.
All right. It is a demonstrative pronoun. Okay. Now, what case?
It's a locative, instrumental, or dative.
All right. Now then, what case is tous lagus?
Accusative.
All right. Now then, since tous lagus is accusative, you know that it has to be the direct object of the verb, don't you? All right. So we can get this much down pat. The Lord was speaking the words. The words. Now then, what case is zoes ioniou?
Genitive.
Genitive. All right. So we know then the Lord was speaking the words of eternal life. But we haven't satisfied what tuto is. We know that it's a case of the locative instrumental dative, and it can't go with lagus, can it? Because lagus is accusative, and this particular case is locative instrumental dative, and if it's going to modify lagus, or if it's going to be used with the lagus, it's got to be the same case, isn't that right? Therefore, since it is not used with any noun, all right, the explanation it gives us in verse 3 stands out then, doesn't it? So, we know that it can be either a masculine or neuter, isn't it? So we have to supply. We have to supply some word there. So we can translate it this way. The Lord was speaking to this man or this one the words of eternal life. See that? So,
Because it doesn't have a substantive or a noun.
That's exactly right. So you have to supply it, don't you? And you have to supply it in keeping with the type of demonstrative pronoun it is. This one, this man, and so forth. See? And you can't tell at this juncture, as you look over in the declension, you can't tell whether it's masculine or neuter, can you? So, any word, whether, just so long as it's masculine, you know it can't be feminine. Because it would have to be an eta, wouldn't it? So you couldn't translate it, the Lord was speaking to this woman, the words of eternal life. So you have to translate, at least you're hedged in with two genders, either masculine or neuter. So you would just say the Lord was speaking to this one or to this man, the words of eternal life. Now that's another very, very good exercise for you to try to teach you about the use of a demonstrative pronoun. And it's also showing you how the various cases function in a sentence. And again, let me emphasize this. Learn to translate by case. Translate by case. Absolutely. So. Don't translate by meaning. Okay? Because if you just take the meaning, well, of lagus, for instance, what do you know that is word? Well, it means word. Let's just make it the subject of the verb. Well, you can't do it that way. Because the meaning of the word, yeah, you have to know the meaning of the word to be sure. But you have to use that word and its meaning according to its function by case. And so you've got nominative, kurios, subject, elegant, imperfect, tense, tuta, instrumental, locative, instrumental, or dative, tous lagus, accusative, zoes ioniou, genitive. Okay? Oh, and now, once again, what kind of an adjective is ioniou?
It's a masculine. Well,
It's a predicate. It's attributed, but it's put in a predicate form.
Well, you don't know. Because there isn't any article with zoes. You don't know, do you? So, you know that by virtue of just the context, how to translate it, you wouldn't translate it, the Lord was speaking to this one the words of life, of eternal. So you know, just by virtue of common sense at this point, as well as the grammatical rule for the use of the adjective, that context determines for you how to translate an adjective when you do not have the article. Remember that? Go back and review the use and the function of the adjective if you have to. The Lord was speaking to this one the words of eternal life. And so you do have eternal in the attributive position. All right, that's fine. Now we'll get on. I want you to really study over the present subjunctive active. All right, take your books now and turn to lesson number 22, page 73, for our discussion in class today. I want you to repeat the vocabulary with me. We have looked at the deponent, the defective verbs, and also the couple of the exercises on page 72, which we trust will be of help to you. Now, the present subjunctive active. Let's have the vocabulary first, and then we'll do some explaining. Hamartano.
Hamartano.
Anabino.
Anabino.
Ana.
Ana.
Now then, notice how ana is used. Ana duo is 2 by 2. Ana hecaton is by hundreds. Okay? This is how you will notice that ana is used to express 2 by 2 and so forth. All right, hina.
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 Very, very important conjunction that you will certainly want to have down pat. Kata.
Kata.
Meta.
Meta.
May.
May.
Noon.
Noon.
Cairo.
Cairo.
Pos.
Pos.
Now, you have had the present active indicative. You are ready now for another mode. Not another tense, but another mode. What is mode? As I bounce it off of your head right now, what is mode?
The way something's done?
Not the way something's, well,
Both of them together?
really not. There's a little difference in the way something's done because you're looking at action, because that could be intense. Eh? Now, mode is the manner in which something is stated. Okay,
Manner of affirmation?
yeah, that's what affirmation means. Now, I had the hardest time with that big old long word because I didn't know what that thing meant. And so I don't use it in that way much anymore. I try to simplify it, but affirmation just means the way something is declared or the way something is said. Now, let me illustrate for you. What's the difference between these two statements? Number one, I am going to town. Number two, I may go to town. What's the difference between those two statements?
One is for sure, the other one is probable, maybe,
Okay.
might.
Now, one is a declaration of fact. The other is, well, come see, come saw, maybe so. Okay? In other words, the indicative is a mode of stating something as a fact. The subjunctive is a mode of stating something of contingency or some type of a hesitation. It isn't a reality, in other words. It's not a fact. All right, now, let's, with that in mind, that'll give you an idea of what we're going to deal with when it comes to the subjunctive mode. The present tense denotes the kind of action. Mode denotes the way something is stated. The voice, active, shows you the subject's relationship to that action in the verb. Okay? Now, verse 6. Paragraph 160. From the previous lessons, it has been learned that the Greek verb has three things: tense, voice, and mode, like verbs in other languages. Again, tense, well, I think he's going to explain this, so I'll just read it. It has been seen in paragraph 14 that tense has to do with the action of the verb as regards the state of action. Okay? As far as Greek action is concerned, it's the kind of action that's in view when you have tense. Now, voice, in paragraph 51 and 52, has to do with the action of the verb as regards the subject of the action. You remember, we've had now all three voices, haven't we? We've had the active voice, we've had the middle voice, and we've had the passive voice. Now, the active voice is the subject doing the acting. The middle voice is what we call a reflexive voice, somewhat. That is, the subject is performing an action upon himself in some manner, or reflective benefit, in other words. Now, the passive voice is the subject isn't doing any of the action, but the subject gets all of the action. See, it comes in on it. Okay. Now then, mode has to do with the manner of affirmation, how it is made, and not with action as do voice and tense. Okay? How we state something, how something is declared, and so forth. All right? Paragraph 162. It has been observed that the indicative is the mode of definite assertion. You can just put out there, it's the statement of fact. Statement of fact. That's what the indicative mode is. It's a statement of fact. Now listen. The fact may be true or not true, but it's still a statement of fact. For instance, I could say this: I shot a moose this morning. Well, I did no such thing. But the statement is the statement of fact, isn't it? I shot a moose. Well, I didn't do such a thing. But the statement is a fact. So that's what he stated, a definite assertion when it comes to indicative. It is used to affirm positively, definitely, absolutely, undoubtedly. Well, that's pretty good, isn't it? And in other words, he wants to get the point across that the indicative mode is pretty much of a definite thing. The mode has nothing to do with the actual facts, whether true or untrue, but only with the statement of them, just as I gave you the illustration a moment ago. The indicative states a thing as true. Well, so long as you know what he means by true, as a true fact, but not necessarily the truthfulness of that fact. Okay. Now, paragraph 163. The subjunctive mode is a mode of doubtful statement, of hesitating affirmation, of contingency. And it is translated when you can express the subjunctive mode, I may. It should be. So forth like that, eh? I may. Now then, the subjunctive is usually found in two tenses, the present and the aorist. The perfect subjunctive is very rare. Well, you haven't had the aorist tense just yet. You're going to be introduced to it before very long. But now, paragraph 164, he gives you the scheme of the present subjunctive active of luo. Okay? Luo, lues, lue. Luomen, lueti, luosi, or you'll find it luosin. Now then, observe these facts. The subjunctive has the primary active personal endings. The long thematic vowel omega eta is the subjunctive mode sign. Now in the second and third person singular, the eta has the iota subscript. So draw you a little line right behind the upsilon if you want to just simply get the endings. So it's O, ace, a, omen, ati, osi. Okay? What have you had when it comes to the matter of the indicative? Well, the indicative is O, ace, a, omen, ati, usi. Now don't you see the similarity where you have the epsilon, you have the eta. Where you have the omicron, you have the omega, except in the first person singular. And someone's going to say, well, how am I going to tell whether it is first person singular indicative or first person singular subjunctive? Context is going to tell you. Context will tell you. Okay. Now then, get it down. Paragraph 166. The present subjunctive of Amy is O, ace, a, omen, ati, osi. All right, those are your endings, aren't they? Those are the endings for your present active subjunctive. Now, the difference being, of course, is your circumflex. So I sure want you to get this down pat, because you've had the indicative of Amy, you've had the imperfect of Amy, now you've got the present subjunctive of Amy, haven't you? You have three conjugations as far as Amy is concerned. And cheer up, you're going to have some more. Because one is the present indicative, the other is the imperfect active, or present active of Amy, imperfect active of Amy, and the subjunctive active of Amy. Presence, of course. All right, now, paragraph 167. The subjunctive is used in clauses of purpose after hina. In other words, one easy way that you might remember it at this juncture in your Greek study is simply this. Hina takes the subjunctive. Now, what do we mean by that? All right, when you find in a Greek sentence, hina, now then the verb that will follow in this clause will be in the subjunctive mode. Can you remember that? You will get so used to this. And invariably then, when I see a hina in a sentence, then I know the verb that follows or comes after hina is going to be in the subjunctive mode, because hina will govern that in order to that or purpose. Now examine closely the following sentences. Notice, if you will, please. Erkatai hina blepe auton. Okay, erkatai is he comes. It's from, remember, erkomai. Therefore, it's translated as an active. He comes. Now you see the little word hina? Now it's translated as that. And often it should be in order that. He comes that he may see him. See blepe? That is third person singular, present, active, subjunctive of blepo. All right? Now when you parse a subjunctive, you will always give the vocabulary form in the present indicative. So this third person singular, present, active, subjunctive of blepo. I see. Understand? All right. Now then, notice the following sentence here now. Tauta leg amen hina me hamartanusi. Well, that's all of it. We say this. Now, what's wrong with that? Remember last time I mentioned to you that often in this book you would find the plural tauta translated as singular? Well, now that's really not right. It should be, we say these things. Because it's plural, isn't it? We say these things. Now notice, hina. In order that, now then let's go to the verb. Ha, martan, osi. What's the mode? Mode is subjunctive. We say these things in order that they may not sin. You see, the may is the negative that goes with the subjunctive. Are you following? Following along in your sentence here? Let's point it out again. Leg omen is the first person plural. Present, active, indicative of lego. Therefore, we translate it as a statement of fact. We say these things. Or it could be translated, we are saying these things. Now, hina. In order that they may not sin. Now, when you use the subjunctive, you are not stating something as a fact, are you? You're simply stating a purpose, and there may be a contingency here, isn't there? And you'll find that over and over and over and over again in your Greek New Testament. All right, any question here? You see what he's explaining? Do you see that? If there is, why...
Can you just go over the contingency again?
All
Just
right.
real quick.
The contingency is that part of the sentence which follows hina. In order that they may not sin. See? We are saying these things. That's a fact. Now there's a purpose which follows the fact that we are saying these things. And that purpose is that they may not sin. Now when you say they may not, well, you're involving someone else's will, isn't that right? And so there's a contingency there. Now I may say these things. For instance, you study your lesson in order that you may pass your test. Well, now I can tell you to study. But what's contingent upon passing that test? You. Isn't that right? So that would be in the subjunctive. You study your lesson. In order that you may pass your exam. See? So there's the contingency aspect. I'm making a statement in the indicative. That's a factual statement. But I'm putting it in the subjunctive because, that is the last part of it, the purpose clause, because there's a contingency involved. That is, I can't make you pass the test.
Well, what's another word for contingency?
The dictionary says uncertainty.
There's some aspect of uncertainty. See? Uncertainty.
Right.
Okay. And you will find this, for instance, in 1 John 2 there. I write these things unto you, little children, in order that you might not sin. Now he's writing. See?
A fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But you see, their sinning is contingent. I mean, for him, as far as getting the truth out. See. All right. Now, Paragraph 168. Note that the negative with the subjunctive is may. Okay? May. Subjunctive with may. Subjunctive with the, the negative with the subjunctive mode is may. I think there might be some exceptions to this that you learn later on, but know it now, okay? 169. There is no time element in the subjunctive modes in any tense. The present subjunctive expresses linear or durative action without reference to time. Now that's a little different than the indicative, isn't it? The present indicative. The present indicative is expressing linear, durative action or linear action in present time, because the indicative is a mode of fact, whereas the subjunctive is a mode of uncertainty. Therefore, you do not have the exact time element. It's just expressing the kind of action. Now then, I want to look at some of these sentences just to see how you are doing. All right. Let's look at number 2. Number 2. All right, Dwayne, I want you to read number 2 and translate that for me, please. Huh?
Kerusamen, hina hoi anthropoi, ekosi, zoin ionion.
All right.
We are proclaiming,
Or what?
or speaking, or announcing.
Preaching.
Preaching.
Yeah.
We are preaching in order that
Hoi anthropoi.
the men
Okay.
might have eternal life.
All right. Now then, parse for me kerusamen.
First person plural present indicative active of keruso.
All right. Now then, that is indicative mode, showing linear or durative action. In other words, he is saying, listen, we're preaching something. Now notice hina. See, hina is expressing now what? Purpose, isn't it? Purpose. All right, what is the purpose? What case is hoi anthropoi?
Nominative plural.
Function.
It's the subject
Subject of what?
of the conjunction hina.
No.
Oh, okay.
Ouch.
Well, I wasn't sure. Because sometimes the prepositions do that, eh? No.
All right, what's the subject of? The subject of what?
Of ekosi,
All right, parse ekosi for me.
third person, plural. Present subjunctive active of echo, I have.
All right, now then, looky here. Ekosi. Third person plural. What's the tense?
Present
Mode.
subjunctive
Why subjunctive?
because of hina.
All right, you have hina over here first, don't you? Now then, you know a verb that follows hina is going to be in the subjunctive mode. Now then, when you have the third person plural and you have a plural noun, all right, there, you know, this has to be the subject of the verb. The law of concord. Have you forgotten so soon? All right. The subject must agree with the subject expressed in the sentence if you have a noun expressed in that sentence. All right, now then, why is it that Well, you've explained it, but nevertheless, once again, why is it that OC is in the subjunctive mode?
Because of the conjunction, you know?
All right. All of you see that? It follows in the sentence, hina, just like this right up here. All right, now then, what case is zoane ionion?
Accusative.
Accusative case. Why is it accusative? Why are they accusative?
Because it's the direct object of the verb.
All right, it's the direct object of the verb ekosi. Now then, what is zoane? What part of speech?
An adjective.
Not zoane. Zoane is,
Oh, I guess a noun then.
it's a noun. Okay,
Yeah,
what part of speech is ionion?
The adjective.
Adjective.
Yeah.
What kind of an adjective?
What kind of an adjective?
Yeah.
An adjective that modifies things.
Yeah, that's right. It sure is. That's what adjectives do. But I won't let you get away with that. Now you tell me.
What kind of an adjective?
Yeah, you remember we've got two kinds of adjectives.
Um,
You remember what are those two kinds of adjectives? Huh? I've been so long time with you and you've forgotten so quick.
I did forget.
Yeah, you sure have. All right. They are predicate and attributive.
Wow.
Predicate and attributive. All right. What kind of an adjective do we have here?
A predicate?
No. Do we translate
Well,
that?
no, it's not translated that, but it doesn't follow it doesn't follow a thing. An article. It doesn't follow an article, so it's in the predicate form.
Do you have an article zoe?
No.
All right. Now then, don't you remember what he said in the study of the predicate and attributive adjectives? That sometimes there are not articles with them.
Uh-huh.
Therefore, you have to determine by virtue of the use and the context what they are.
Yeah, but aren't they like you parse the form, but even you translated active, but you parse the form? Well, that's the way I was taking it.
No, well that's a verb.
Yeah, I know, but like it's written in the predicate, but you parse. I said it in the attributive.
No, it's not written in the predicate.
Okay.
It's attributive because there aren't any articles. Now, this is a very important point that you brought up. It's not something lightly to look at. Fellas, again, and for all, you can tell two ways, whether an adjective is attributive or an adjective is predicate. If it's attributive, it will follow an article, number one. If it is predicate, it won't have an article in front of it. But there is a third way also. And the third way is when neither noun or adjective has an article, but how it is used in a sentence. See? And so this is just as much attributive, eternal life, as if the article preceded ionion. See? Because neither the noun nor the adjective has the article. Now, is that clear?
Yeah.
You need to remember that, because we get so used to having the crutches, and we call the article a crutch here, because that is just what it is. It tells us, in other words. But you know good and well it's attributive by virtue of function, the way it is used. And it is just as much attributive here as if it had the article in front of it, because neither the adjective nor the noun has the article. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering if it was translated life eternal, would
No.
it be the same?
No.
Just a bad translation.
Well, sure, because you don't say that in English, do you? You don't put the adjective after the noun if it's an attributive adjective. See?
Okay, and the way we can we can tell it's an attributive adjective how?
It's function. Function. See, might have eternal life. Eternal life. Now, I think you're going to find some translations life eternal. Yes, but what's wrong with that?
They put the attributive.
Right. And they are really making. They are really beginning to make that a predicate adjective. Life is eternal.
And I'm sorry, I just flew over my head. How can we determine if it's an attributive?
By its function. See? And its function, or the way it is used. Now then, there are two ways that you know whether it's attributive or predicate. One is if it follows the article or does not follow the article. The third is if neither noun or adjective has the article. Then how's it used in the sentence? See? And it's quite obvious that you've got an attributive adjective here, or that is particularly in these exercises, or he would have given you Amy between Zoin and Ionion, see, to make it a predicate. All right, now then, let's do number 5. Can you do that, Wes? Number 5?
Theos, lege, Haman, Hina, Me, Men Omen, En, Te, Amartia.
All right, and te hamartia. Okay, fine. Now translate it for me.
Okay, God speaks.
Amen.
Here. Is
Notice, I want the definition for Haman, and I also want you to translate it by case. What case is it first?
locative to dative.
Locative, dative, or instrumental. All right. Now then, what's the meaning of Haman?
Haman is the plural of
Out.
is second.
No,
Person.
no, not second person. It's Haman.
Okay, so so it's first person.
All right, first person plural. It's a personal pronoun. First person, personal pronoun. In the plural. Okay? Now then, translate that much again.
So God speaks to us.
All right, God speaks to us. Now Hannah.
In order that
All right.
Menomen is so it's we so that we will not remain in sin.
Right. All right. Now then, God speaks to us in order that we might not remain in sin. Okay? All right. Now then, parse for me, menomen.
Menomen is the first person singular, present.
No, hit it again. Not singular.
First person plural of present, subjunctive, active
Of.
meno, I remain.
All right. All right. Okay. Fine and dandy. All right, fellas. I think we will call that quits for this particular lesson. And now, listen. I want you to definitely read the next 3 lessons. Get them read over good for our next class session, because we're going to do all 3 of these in our next sessions, okay? All 3 of them. All right, fine. All right, now again, for another lesson, lesson number 23, page 75. Now then, we look in this lesson to the other 2 voices of the subjunctive. Present subjunctive, middle and passive. Now again, I believe you must organize your thinking. We've had two different tenses so far, isn't that right? We've had the present tense, we've had the imperfect tense. We've had two modes now. We've had the indicative mode, and we have had the subjunctive, or we are studying the subjunctive mode. Now, if you can't do anything other than put these things down on a sheet of paper or some way so that you can see that they're distinct, well, go ahead and do it. I don't mind how you learn, just so long as you do learn it, because they are so very, very vital, important. If you don't get this first year Greek, you just absolutely cannot take syntax. We've tried it; it doesn't work. So let's learn it. Let's get a basis so we can go ahead and understand syntax and study our Bible, because your Bible is going to open up to you when you can apply syntax. But the person who only has a few little definitions for some words, that's like me saying I'm a doctor of medicine because I can pronounce cardiologist, which is a heart doctor. Well, I can be a heart doctor then, because I know what cardiology means. Isn't that ridiculous? And that's precisely the same as this when it comes to the matter of Greek. All right, now then, let's repeat the vocabulary on page 75, paragraph 171. Aspazomai,
Aspazomai.
euangelion,
Evangelion.
decomai,
Decomai.
kathos,
Kathos.
kainos,
Kainos.
martyria.
Martyria.
Over the page. Un, hutos.
Hutos.
Now there's some things here I want to explain by way of this vocabulary. Now please notice the word decomai. Decomai. Have you had another Greek word that means receive?
Yeah, lambano. I take a receive.
Lambano. Okay, let me put one on the board. Lambano. That's right. No. Okay. That means to receive. This means to receive. What's the difference? There is a difference. This word simply just means to receive in general. This word can mean that, but it also has a different concept, and that is to receive with a welcome. Now, who read for me 1 Corinthians 2:14? 1 Corinthians 2:14, there in your English Bible. Okay.
But the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned.
All right, now then, let me ask you a question. Can the unsaved individual know anything about the Bible?
Sure you can.
Okay, how do you go and explain that verse?
You're a teacher.
A head knowledge, but not a heart knowledge.
All right, but another way too. This word right here means to receive with a welcome. Now I'll illustrate this one. I used to do quite a lot of flying from place to place in ministry. Now, I came to Canada a number of years ago. I was met at the airport by a friend. And he shook my hand. He received me at the airport. Now then, when I went home, and the airplane taxied up to let you out, and this is before we had any of the securities such as that, before the world developed in such a terrible place it is right now. That out of the window I could see Lila, and I could see that she and her brother-in-law and sister-in-law, a sister was there, and at that time Alice was just a babe in arms, and I could see my little boy. And as all little boys with reference to daddies, why, he was waving at that big airplane, you know, like this. All right, now when I came down the steps, I looked up there and I waved at everyone. And boy, Steve's arm was just a flopping. And so I could see them starting to turn to go down into the airport where they could meet me. And I had quite a little ways to walk, so that gave them a time to get down. And by the time I got through the double doors, I looked down there, and they had come off of it. They'd come down the stairs or escalator, I forget what it was. But I want to tell you, peeling through the middle of that throng of waiting or departing passengers was a little boy, and his feet were just unmoving. And of course, all of the people there saw, they were just grinning, because you know what he's doing, he's hollering, yelling, just like your little children will do one of these days. And boy, he didn't care, he didn't see anyone else, he just made a beeline straight for his daddy. And when he got to it, well, of course, we just went into a bear hug, isn't that right? Now, what was the difference between the reception in the two airports? When I came to Canada, my friend received me. When I got back to my family received me. But how? With a welcome. With a welcome. Dekomai. Dekomai, again, can just mean receive. But dekomai has latent within it also the thought to receive with a welcome. The natural man does not welcome. He can receive them. He can receive them in general as far as intellectual knowledge is concerned, can he? Natural man does not welcome the things of the Spirit of God. Well, it goes on to tell us, for their foolishness unto him. He's not going to welcome something as far as he's concerned. The Greek word is morion, which means moronish. To him, this Bible is stupid. Neither can he experience and know them because they are spiritually discernible. Why, I'll tell you, some of the greatest theologians on the face of the earth today, great by way of massive literature and following, are a bunch of liberal characters that deny the inspiration of scriptures, deny the virgin birth of Christ, deny the efficacy of the blood of Christ. Well, yet they've got all kinds of works out. Sure they have. They're not ignoramuses. Absolutely not. But they do not receive or welcome spiritual truth. Okay, now there's something else that I should point out to you. On page 76, the little word un. It says it's a post-positive adverb. What do you mean by post-positive? What do you mean?
It can't stand first in a sentence, but it's translated first.
That's right. If we had some words like this, a word there, and then you have un. Eh? You have un. Here's exercise number 1. And you had anthropos there. Therefore, the man. This is post-positive. it cannot stand first in the sentence, but translated first in the sentence. Understand that? Post-positive. Now there are several post-positive words. All right. Here we go. Now then, in this lesson, he's going to be dealing with, as we stated, the middle and passive voice of the present subjunctive verb. So again, he is going to use the scheme of Luo in the conjugation of the present, middle, and passive. Now please observe, if you will, the forms are exactly the same for the middle and the passive. Middle and the passive. Now, fellas, believe me, you're having it easy. And listen, take all the gifts you can get now, because he's going to make you work a little later. He's really going to make you sweat, because he's going to put into one lesson the present, the imperfect, the aorist, the pluperfect, the future, and all of the voices. That's just one lesson. He's going to give you all of that a little bit later on. So take the grace now, if you will, please. And learn it now, because he's building something for you that you're going to be putting into use a little bit later. So, here you have Luomai, Lue, Luatai, Luomatha, Lueste, Luontai. Please observe second person singular Lue. It's got a what?
Iota subscript.
That's right. It's got an iota subscript. And it's there. All right. Now then, observation. The middle and passive forms are alike. This was seen in the indicative also, eh? Now, the mode sign, omega eta, is the same as in the active. So always remember that when it comes to the subjunctive, that thematic vowel is omega and eta, isn't it? Whether it's in the present voice or whether it's in the middle and passive voice. Where you would have an omicron, it would be omega, of course. This is borne out more accurately in the middle and passive, because you remember the first person singular present active subjunctive is luo, the same as the indicative. But the context is going to tell you why. But here in the middle and the passive, wherever you would find an omicron, you're going to find an omega. Wherever you would find an epsilon, you're going to find an eta. Okay? All right, good. And he says the personal endings are the middle, and he mentions to you the iota subscript. All right, now then, paragraph 174. Now, take your pencil or pen and put a great big star right alongside of that, just as big as you can, because this is a rule that you are going to have to know and put into practice. The subjunctive first person plural is used in exhortations. What's an exhortation?
To build up. To make someone feel good.
Encourage them to do something, kind of.
Yes, but when it comes to the grammar, it is that which is somewhat on the imperative idea. Let us. Okay? Let us. Let us. Say, let us. For instance, the book of Hebrews is just full of them. Let us go on to perfection. Let us do this, and let us do that. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us. Let us do this, and let us do that. All right, that's a translation of a verb in the first person plural subjunctive.
Okay, just for a question here thrown in, is it in both the active and middle and passive, or just the active? His examples only give it in the active, and this is a middle and passive lesson. I was just wondering about that, if it's in all three.
I think so.
Yeah. Every time. No.
I would say I hedge off from some of these things every time, because just as sure as we have an exception with someone who's going to hit me on the head with a club and not with a hammer. So at this point, you get very, very suspicious when you come across a first person plural subjunctive. okay? That it is an exhortation, such as in the illustration, Chiromen ente aletheia. Now, we would want to translate it, may we rejoice in the truth, or maybe we will rejoice in the truth. No, because it is first person plural. Let us rejoice in the truth. Eh? Now then, the next one. Let us not speak evil things. Now you'll know kaka here is in the plural accusative. And since it's neuter and it is an adjective, you have to add that which follows the adjective according to its gender. Let us not speak evil things. Okay? Now, many verbs in Greek are followed by the genitive case and many by the dative case, where the corresponding verbs in English would be followed by the objective case. In each instance, the idea of case is accented. Now then, you have learned, haven't you, up to this point, that the accusative is the case of the direct object. Isn't that right? The direct object. That is the object of the verb. Now he's going to tell you something here. That which appears to be the object may not be in the accusative case. And you're going to say, thank you. I didn't know that. Well, you got it. All right. Now, notice what it says. He hears the voice. Well, why in the world isn't tes, phones in the accusative instead of genitive? Well, at this point, he's emphasizing the fact that it is an objective genitive. You're going to learn all about these things a little bit later. But it's acting as the object, but it is not in the objective case. All he's saying here, this just tells kind of sound. The accusative may be used after aku, then the meaning of the sound is comprehended. So what he's saying is, listen, one gives you the kind of the sound, and the other gives you the completion of the sound. So he gives you not only the genitive, but also notice some of these other words here. We believe him. Well, what case is that?
Vocative instrumental word is.
Yeah, that's right. Then the other. He answers the child. I serve him. Note that the dative accents the personal interest. So what he's driving at here, there are certain words that may take cases that would normally occur in the accusative. At this juncture, the genitive is just showing kind of action. The dative here is emphasizing interest, and that's what the dative does. But it's used in an objective sense. All right, now then, did you do your exercises in page 170, paragraph 176? Well, I'm going to find out whether you did or not, because we're going to put you on video and let these dear folks that look at the video find out if you've been faithful to your lesson or not. All right.
I was just worried. Yes.
Well, that's good. You'll get more worried. Go ahead.
At the word duluo.
Duluo.
The ending, doesn't look familiar. Why?
Well, yeah, the ending does.
It's a verb, not a noun. You're familiar
Right.
with doulos?
You're familiar with doulos,
Well,
but
this
this
is
is
the
the
verb.
verb duluo.
It's not the same word. And
Not in our vocabulary.
Oh, I think it is really. I don't think he.
I don't think he's given it to us as a verb yet.
Okay, thank you.
Well, if he hasn't,
You got it now.
you got it now, and you also got it in the back.
Right. Why the U? Oh.
Huh?
Why the?
Although, that's the form of it, my good man.
Okay. Well, we'll get on to that on a further lesson.
Yeah, if you look on page 257, you'll have the definition for that. 257, Duluo, I am a servant, I serve. So if you have a word and you say you haven't had it,
Right.
yeah, you got it.
Oh yeah, I know.
It's
I
in
was
the
just,
lexicon.
yeah, I was just kind of worried about the U in Uo. How did that ever come into the picture?
Well, that's what makes up the word.
It must follow a declension or
No,
something?
no declension when it comes to verbs. Verbs are conjugated. Declensions are not.
Yes, I'm sorry, but it must have a conjugation of some kind.
Yeah, it does. Dulo.
The always saying.
Oh,
Right,
just like any old active verb, it's a verb that can be conjugated in the present
Okay,
active,
so it's
middle
just-
passive.
Right.
It's
It's
just
just one of a kind verb.
Well, it's a verb that, just like any other verb, is one of a kind of itself.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought it followed some kind of pattern.
No. Now then.
Dr. Bob?
Yes, sir.
Also, I had a question. What
Yes.
this area, it says, like we had the first person plural, right? Translated as let us,
Mhm.
as exhortation. Is it always just the first person plural, or is every,
No, the first person plural.
that's
Yeah,
that's
first
it? All the rest are, is
Now,
may,
I
right?
can say this to you. Not always in the first person plural will it be hortatory subjunctive. But when it is used, as an exhortation, then you'll translate it. But your context determines that for you, okay? It might be used in a subordinate clause with hina in the first person plural in order that we might live for him. For instance, that's a verb that I just pointed out to you, and that's not a hortatory subjunctive at all, or one that expresses an exhortation that is used in a sense of our obligation, isn't it? Not let us, but we should live. Okay, we should not let this. Okay, any other question? All right. Now then, we have a few minutes before this class session ends. Now let's just do some of these exercises just to see if you can zero in on things and how you've done it or how you haven't done it. Okay? Here we go. Now let's see. All right, just for the fun of it, Luke, you take number 2. Come on, hit it now.
Agometa, hupa, ton, apostolon.
Okay,
Okay.
now translate it.
Right. We may go under the apostles.
Okay, now then, what, parse for me, og, o, metha.
It's the first person plural of the subjunctive indicative middle or passive
All right, of,
ago, I go.
all right, that's fine. Now then, you've just had some teaching that when you have a first person plural, you could have a hortatory subjunctive here, or a subjunctive that's used with an exhortation.
Oh, yes, that's right. So it would be let us go.
Huh? Now that's active. And you parsed it for me as a middle or passive. Now translate it according to your parsing. Come on!
I think I never thought about that.
Agomatha,
Oh, yes.
you translate it as first person plural. Present, middle or passive, subjunctive of ago, I go. All right. But it's first person plural, isn't it? translate it as a first person plural in light of the lesson that he gave you here.
Let us go? Let us be going?
No. Now then, give me the passive or middle voice. Because you parsed it as a middle or passive. Now what are you going to do? What's it going to be? Is it going to be middle or is it going to be passive? All right, any of you. How do you know what it's supposed to be here? How do you know precisely what this is supposed to be? No guesswork at all, but you know precisely from this example right here whether it is middle or passive. Now you take a look. Take a look in your book, carefully examine it. You know precisely what voice it's supposed to be.
Because of, well, I don't like jumping out the words, but
Well, that's all
in case
right,
of,
because it's any of you now.
in case of, hoopah tone, it's given an agent that we go by, or who's sending
All
us.
right.
So it'd be
You have learned in lessons prior to this that hoopah plus the ablative indicates agency. And when you have a passive voice, and that is passive, you got to look around to see who's going to do the acting. Isn't that right? Sure. And it happens to be the apostles that are going to be doing the acting, isn't it? Let us be going, or let us be led by the apostles. See that? You do now, don't you? But the things that you have learned are supposed to help you here. The things that you haven't learned don't help you here. And hoopah plus the ablative shows you that the agent happens to be apostle. All right? Hoopah plus the ablative. That is your agent. Understand? Just a minute here. We're going to have to do something here. Is our tape about to go out? But I want to emphasize that for you while we're just waiting here. Just go back over this same thing. Now then, ag-omatha, first person plural. And he stated in the plural. And this answers your question. Can it occur only in the active or the middle of the passive? Well, it can certainly occur in the middle of the passive. Here's an illustration, right? Let us be led. Hoopah plus the ablative tells me exactly who's going to do the leading as far as I'm concerned, or we are concerned. We are the objects because of the passive voice. Now then, in the passive voice, you have to hunt for some kind of an agent. And here is the agent. Hoopah plus the ablative is doing the acting. And it is just simply an exhortation for us to submit our wills to the apostles. Let us be led by the apostles. All right? Everyone happy there? Okay, fine.